sightings of a deep-sea dinosaur, later named Gorka.
The day has finally arrived. I feel like each and every Godzilla analog horror video I have done thus far has all been leading up to this video. Project Monster, which I had no idea included Shelter 54, which I know has been highly requested. Don't worry, man. It's finally here. But little did I know, it's a whole series. I had actually seen the thumbnail for The Griffin a few times and never thought it was going to be the start of a much larger Godzilla story. And let me tell you, I now know what I was missing, and why you were all so adamant I check this out. As of writing this, The Griffin is all I have seen, and I just know that I am in for a fantastic ride. We have no other options but to get right into the magic here, folks. This series had me so excited, I even invited along Mr. Minus to check it out with me. As always, be sure to check out the original series before diving in over here for us to face the monsters as a group. And seriously, if you haven't seen this series, go watch it. Pause the video right now. Click the link down below. It's worth it, trust me. Alright, are you back? Let's put on our hazmat suits, as I'm sure we have a lot of radiation coming our way.
The Griffin, Tape 1. Our first video, The Griffin, starts with a logo from the United Nations Godzilla Countermeasure Center, otherwise known as UNGCC, and... okay, wait, hold up. Okay, so, a lot of you guys previously on the Left 4 Dead video pointed out that I was mispronouncing the agency. I guess it's SETA, not SETA. I'm very sorry about that. I was not aware, and I will be sure to speak more accurately. So the UNGUC logo plays, followed by a warning claiming any replication of our tape is prohibited by the UNGCC. Our first tape is shockingly titled The Griffin, and occurred on November 27th, 1994. Interesting note, at the bottom of the screen it says this includes subjects 1, 16, and 25. Not alarming at all. We're shown a map of a shit show as a voice explains that a meteor landed in Utah in the year 1994 in November, the same year Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla released. The video explains that an alien organism escaped, and for the next few days it went towards the east and proceeded to take a bat form and eat up the wildlife. Where's Ozzy when you need him? The colony eventually settled in Kentucky and formed one singular mass. Must have been all the KFC. Shortly after, the creature made its way to New York City. It is then explained that another creature began making its way towards NYC as well and was believed to be Godzilla. Then, well, the video changes. Instead of looking at a brief, we are then shown what looks to be aerial footage of New York City. The kaiju looks a lot like late 90s Godzilla, actually. So, late 90s Godzilla mocks his greatest enemy, King Kong, by hanging off the Empire State Building. We cut to footage from inside a building that shows late 90s Godzilla having a stroll down the street when suddenly he time travels to 2001. He gets dragged around for a second before he's jumped on as his foe does a victory screech. It hangs off of a building before we see a familiar laser blast him right off. A new angle reveals that our favorite kaiju has come to open up a can of whoop-ass. After this, it's pure chaos, with the two giving it everything they got. We even get a cool shot of Godzilla shooting his laser. It doesn't last long though, as soon after, the cameraman is knocked off the building after Godzilla is thrown into it, resulting in an unfortunate meeting with the pavement.
It seems like all hope is lost after our late 90s Godzilla seems down for the count. This guy standing right under his mouth has a lot more balls than I do, I'll tell you that much. However, in the back, we can see our classic Godzilla returning for more. He does a reverse 720 tailspin attack against the Griffin, and whips his jaw with his tail. Then out of nowhere, the 90s Godzilla springs back into action and tackles the Griffin. He manages to tear a horn right off his head, but it looks like the Griffin was able to expel this sort of gas from its back. The footage begins to glitch out a little bit, but once we return, we see the Griffin and Godzilla engage in a test of laser strength, firing beams straight at each other, surely to cause even more death and destruction than what's already been done. The explosion knocks out the footage, and we return to see the aftermath of the fight. It looks like the insides of a giant creature is sprawled all across the city streets. The 90s Godzilla and current Godzilla look at each other and give a nod of success, before we get this really badass frame. The Griffin's head stuck on the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Before this tape ends off, we are shown an event analysis detailing the specifics of the tragedy. We see this was considered a threat level 4. I'd hate to see any number higher than that one. We can see an evacuation success of 64%. 34.6% of the city was destroyed, and over 435,000 people were killed, and 1 subject was captured. Why would we want to capture one? Who's to say? Honestly, why even bother asking at this point? Like I said in the intro, it was actually insane to see the level of quality that existed in this tape, and it makes me even more excited to get into the ones up next. I'm literally baffled as to how this is yet to have been covered in the Godzilla videos. Like, give this guy a movie deal, stat.
The video is an amazing opener for the series. It gives us the context we need, and like Mr. Plus said, the quality of the fight was actually top tier. The fight not only looked good, but managed to capture both fear and amazement, thanks to the more found footage style it presents to us. It shows the absolutely massive scale these kaijus would have if they arrived on our shores, and just how devastating it would be to our cities. The chaos and destruction they bring is honestly horrifying to think about, which is amplified by the screams of the citizens running for their lives. Putting the viewer into the shoes of the victims was a great idea, as it kind of reminded me of Cloverfield. But it also successfully gave us the cool shit we come to see in a Godzilla film. The shot where Godzilla fires his laser and comes into frame roaring was so badass. And this image goes so fucking hard, dude, like god damn. I'd say this is one hell of a first impression for the series, and it only goes up from here.
Living with Monsters. Tape 2. The first thing we are met with this tape is an everyday moment in SpongeBob, a nuclear explosion. The creation of these weapons is said to be the cause of the monsters appearing in our society, and introducing mankind into a menacing new era. We are then introduced to our host, who will be guiding us through this bizarre world of kaijus, Gene Maldonado. The program that is being played for us, hosted by Gene, is rightfully titled Living with Monsters. Gene then goes on to list off all the known monsters that scientists have discovered so far, considering they have been a normal part of this world for around 7 years now. The list includes Godzilla, Anguirus, I don't know how to say that one.
I think it's Kanira.
Let me check.
Kanira.
I think you're right.
Hehe.
Kanira, Gorgo, and Manda. Oddly, no mention of that second creature that was in the last tape, the one that just looked like Godzilla's American design from the 90s. Is that truly supposed to be a second Godzilla, blending the two creatures into the same movie? We then learn that these monster sightings have actually been recorded since the beginning of mankind. These records include ancient artifacts and drawings, but the modern world of today was first introduced to these monsters through a movie, specifically King Kong. We are then shown a mini trailer for this movie, and once again, I had to take a step back in awe that this was literally not something produced by a full studio. It's super cool to see all the action callbacks from the King Kong movies take place in this little trailer. The animation work and detail is just top tier. This movie rightfully attracted viewers from all over the world, and as it turns out, this wasn't just any movie, it was actually a documentary. And the director of the film brought 2 creatures from the island as proof that it was all real. A triceratops and this giant dinosaur-looking creature. Needless to say, the audience was stunned.
After a SpongeBob explosion, we are told that development stopped until a hydrogen bomb was detonated in the Bikini Atoll. If you're knowledgeable of Godzilla, you should know what exactly this is going to lead to. A large reptilian creature washes up on the shores of Japan and is named after a metal band, Gojira. In the West, we call him, you guessed it, Peter. Nah, it's Godzilla. It is claimed that he was hidden away for millions of years until the hydrogen bomb detonated and brought him out. He's a member of the superfauna ecosystem. Gene claims that small villages in Japan were aware of these titan-sized creatures and kept it hidden from all of us. An example of this being a cult known as Kaiju Kai. Kinda sounds like a pro wrestler. It was believed by them that these beings were gods, and in turn, they'd sacrifice their own to the sea as a peace offering. Perhaps Ocean Gate was even better than we thought. A few days later, a second Godzilla sank a few ships in Tokyo Bay and headed to the city next. The city began preparations through the building of anti-Godzilla walls, which were basically just giant power lines set as a wall to shock the poor guy if he ever came by. Unfortunately, his height was miscalculated and, well...
We witness as this variation of Godzilla is indeed way too large for this plan to work, and all that it leads to is yet another attack on Tokyo at the hands of Godzilla. And goddamn, I know I keep saying it, but the animation is just so good. The battle, expectedly, ends with the city destroyed and Godzilla gone. We see the brutal aftermath, and can see almost this person acting like a zombie, twitching on the floor. Freaky stuff. We are shown a newspaper that claims that the devastation of Tokyo was the result of an earthquake, potentially to keep the outside world from doing anything rash and idiotic. Which I mean, come on. We are then introduced to this professor who believes that the Godzilla that washed up to shore was in fact a child, and the giant Godzilla that came later was the Pops. The professor also believes the lights of the city also had a hand in antagonizing Godzilla, so the city put that theory to the test. They put Tokyo through a complete blackout. Surprisingly enough, Godzilla showed up and had no interest in destroying anything. Sounds like they were right. The United Nations then held an emergency meeting, and the photos of Godzilla's devastation was met with shocking reactions from the world leaders. A plan had to be formed to stop his rampage, hence the hydrogen bomb. The UN then launched Operation Kismet, and it was super classified. It sounds like they planned to lure Godzilla into the strike zone, and then the bomb would strike. Footage is shown of the operation in action, and Godzilla is in sight. Now it's a full-on fight, with a ton of gunfire hitting Godzilla, but to no avail, as he is easily able to lift one of the ships up and fire his laser at the rest. But then it came time for the bomb.
2, 1.
This operation was deemed a success, but it was only called a temporary solution, considering a new player decided to enter the ring.
Gene tells us that apparently another kaiju was spotted near Okinawa. Footage of the absolute hell it's able to raise is shown, as we are told he goes by the name of Anguirus. Information on the creature was vague, but what they did know was that it was quickly headed towards Japan. As to why, no one knew until Tokyo confirmed Godzilla was still alive. I ship these two so much. Unfortunately, they won't just admit their feelings to each other, which leads to them having a heated, oh, I made a mistake in typing. Let me redo that.
Math of epic proportions.
Math of epic proportions. Fucking hell, dude, how stupid am I? Unfortunately, they won't just admit their feelings to each other, which leads to them having a heated match of epic proportions. Godzilla uses his laser. Anguirus bitch smacks him with his tail. Godzilla uses his laser again. The fight ends when Anguirus tries to give Godzilla a hickey and ends up taking multiple lasers instead. With Godzilla proving he's an alpha, Anguirus ran off and now lives peacefully in his retirement home off the coast of New Zealand, much to the dismay of the locals. The fight, however, was a sign of what humanity was going to have to accept. There is no hope for things to go back to normal, as our fate is in the hands of kaijus.
Oddly enough, something good at least came from the battle between Godzilla and Anguirus, and that was that they were able to get new information on these monsters that they haven't been able to get before. Pieces like fins, teeth, and even appendages from the creatures are said to have been knocked/ripped off during the fight, leaving them scattered throughout the city. Also, scientists figured that Anguirus had gone through an evolutionary adaptation, like his natural ability to shield itself from the atomic breath, almost as if these species had been fighting since the beginning, and all throughout time they had evolved to withstand the damage from consistent battling. If you thought matters couldn't get any worse, well, you'd be wrong. Fuck, I don't know how to say these things.
I'm willing to bet these little, pronunciation conversations, Caleb's gonna put some of it in the video.
Yes, I did.
The Chaitin volcano in Chile erupted, which led to these horrifyingly large dragonflies spewing out and attacking the nearby villagers. Thankfully, these creatures were able to be sealed in an abandoned mine. But if you have PTSD from the butterfly in SpongeBob, I'm sure these things are your worst nightmare. It's even believed that the dragonflies weren't the only thing within the volcano, as we see what looks to be a giant octopus chilling out inside as well.
Hentai.
Then only weeks... What?
I just said hentai, I'm sorry. I
Oh.
just want to fuck with you.
Then only weeks later, the monster Chimera decided it hated Hawaii. We see his officers, for some reason, try firing bullets at the crab, but to no avail. This resulted in many cargo ships no longer able to enter the area. And it doesn't end there either. Off the coast of Ireland, near a small island, the monster Gorgo appeared, a deep-sea dinosaur. Luckily, this monster is relatively isolated, and only attacks when attacked, so leave it the fuck alone. And it still isn't over. Now heading towards China, we learn about the monster Manda, the serpent, my absolute worst fear. This thing is downright terrifying to see in action, but so cool at the same time. Our earlier professor believes that the nuclear bomb attack on Godzilla is the reason why all these creatures have awoken. Otherwise, none of this would have happened.
Gene explains now that the kaijus are all waking up, we are now in the midst of what seems to be a kaiju war as they battle for territory and dominance. An example is Kinera being located in Hawaii, which impedes on Godzilla's territory, thus causing a lot of conflict between the two. We cut to footage of Godzilla and Kinera pulling at each other's hair, before we see another example of Menera and Godzilla fighting, due to the former being located in Hong Kong. Starting to think there's a reason you're single here, Mr. Zilla. The two have a little dispute with a Mass Effect 3 reference on top, as Gene explains that the presence of kaijus is not all doom and gloom. The mass destruction of highly populated cities may be a downer, but on the bright side, we're finally done with the petty wars since we face extinction. That and starvation won't be a problem soon, and not for the reasons you think. Gene explains the nuclear radiation has actually improved the fertility of soil, which creates, as he calls, superfoods. While you can't currently eat your extra green lettuce yet, scientists claim in the next few years, you'll be able to taste that sweet radiation which will aid in ending global hunger. The UN has also made an organization known as the Godzilla Counterattack Center. Essentially, it's a global organization aiming to further research and develop new ways to destroy Godzilla and the other kaijus. They've developed ways to protect their people as well as ways to detect the activity of the superfauna beings. Additionally, the scientists are gathering on Skull Island for more research. They speculate the origins of these beings lie somewhere on the island. The video hopes for a better world of peace and unity as the video ends. How sweet.
Yet again, these tapes are just so fascinating to watch. If you're a huge Godzilla fan, you're eating really good. Besides Godzilla -1, this may just be the most interesting and horrifying version of the universe we've gotten in a really long time. It's as clear as ever that the animation quality from the last tape to this one jumped yet again. Just the small details like how Godzilla's skin moves when he shakes his head around turns this from a fan-made Godzilla series to something I legitimately could foresee leading to bigger and greater things for this series and team of people.
There was quite a lot to discuss in this video, but once again it manages to provide more information on this world and strengthen the intrigue. The format of being an episode of an old-timey show was a great move as it allowed the video to give us plenty of exposition in a natural way. There were a lot of cameos from the kaijus, which as Mr. Plus said, should satisfy plenty of fans. Additionally, the fight scenes continue to be amazing to watch, which once again, the videos themselves have a lot of quality behind them. There's some clips of this that if you were to show them to someone and tell them it's an actual older show, they'd probably believe you. Props to the creators because this was some good production quality. Best part is, we haven't even gotten to the main event yet.
Subject 8, 1958. Tape 3. This tape is on the shorter end as it's only about 30 seconds, and seems to be more of a tease for what's to come. We see the logo for the UNGCC, which is then followed by various footage of these people just living their lives. We are then shown likely one of those ancient artifacts/statues that Gene had mentioned earlier, followed by another cave drawing showing off another kaiju, what people are claiming to be Varan. However, to end off this tease, we are shown quite the interesting looking creature. Interestingly enough, the description of this video actually gives us a bit more context. Researchers were escorted to the site of Varan in a sacred valley hidden within the mountains. They demanded safety of the superfauna, claiming it to be a religious figure in the local areas. Subject 8 appears non-aggressive, addition to the threat list to be determined. I'm glad that even though this was a tease, it still was a mini-event happening in this universe. But I'm very curious to see if any of these new kaiju shown are going to be making their appearances very soon.
Overall, this series is excellent. I got to see kaijus fight, but I also got to see it from a much different perspective. As said before, we're more used to cinematic depictions of Godzilla raining terror upon a city and fighting his fellow kaijus, which made the handheld and archived footage look of the series all the more unique. The effects again were absolutely phenomenal, especially by fan film standards. I can only get more excited with each installment to come as the series grows in popularity and capability. God knows they've earned it.
I think it goes without saying that me and Mr. Minus both have thoroughly enjoyed what we have seen so far from Project Monster. This series is probably the best Godzilla fan film I've seen in general. I know a few Godzilla fans who definitely need to check this series out. The team, or one person, behind Lost Utopia Films are clearly dedicated fans to the character and universe. And it shows with how well they were able to create this believable world, full of different monsters outside of Godzilla. And we've only gotten a taste of the smaller, more horrific stories that take place in this universe due to these monsters running around. And I can see Mr. Minus and I are both unbelievably excited to see what Shelter 54 has in store for us next Sunday. Please, before you riot. Next Sunday, me and Mr. Minus will both be back to take on Shelter 54, so at least you know you won't have to wait for too long. If you didn't know that you were going to be in that video, you know now.
I am your boss. Boss.
Once again, we thank you for both your patience and support. I say it every video, but we couldn't do any of this without you guys clicking on all the terror we have to witness on a weekly basis. The loss of sleep is worth it. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe and like the video as it really helps us out. We'll see you next time for your weekly scheduled minutes of fear.
However, if you are among the few who haven't already, be sure to check out the original creator, Lost Utopia Films, because there's no way me explaining the action is better than watching the action. You can watch me explain the action later. But on that note, be sure to keep leaving us recommendations down below, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord where, just like the Griffin, I'm always watching over from high above. But if you'll excuse me, I hear an attack coming on and me and Mr. Minus need to get to Shelter 54. Unfortunately, it's about a 7-day trip.